Good morning, everyone. Is my voice clear? Can someone tell me? And is this screen clearly visible to you? Okay. So welcome to today's session, and in this session we will try to cover the news from 5th, 6th and 7th January. Okay. So there is a lot of news, mostly in the phase 1 specific one-liner news, but we'll do this finance news thoroughly. We'll take time with respect to this, but with respect to objective one-liner type of news, we'll skim it fast. Okay. So without further wasting our time, let's start with the first news. So the individual investment in short-term commercial papers as well as non-convertible debentures limited to 25% of the issue size. This is a mandate released by Reserve Bank of India. Okay. So in order to understand this news, we have to understand what exactly commercial papers are and what exactly debentures are. And when we understand debentures, then we have to see what exactly is non-convertible debentures. Okay. So if you look at company's needs, as discussed earlier, how does a company raise fund? It can either raise through equity by listing its shares, either in public format or via private placement, or they can go for debt, in which for long term they can issue some dated bonds, or for short term liquidity they opt for commercial papers. Or debentures. So at least you get this idea that both of these things, commercial paper as well as debenture, they are a form of debt instrument. Okay. So the news actually talks about this kind of specific instrument. Okay. In which commercial paper is usually a very short term, instrument to raise funds, to raise short-term liquidity, just like how the bond functions, similarly the commercial paper functions. So the commercial paper must be denominated in, let's say, rupees 5 lakhs. The company pays to the bearer of this commercial paper 5 lakh rupees at a particular maturity date, and these commercial papers are issued at discount. That means 5 lakh rupees commercial paper will be sold at, let's say, 4.9 lakh rupees. And in the end, whatever 10,000 rupees you will get, this is your interest. Okay? So this is with respect to commercial papers. And the quality of commercial paper is that it is an unsecured debt. That means it is not backed by any asset of a particular company. It is only just on the basis of credit worthiness of the company. Or you can say the image of the company with respect to its payment of debt. So if you trust any particular company, let's say these two companies have released a commercial paper to raise 5 lakh rupees for a particular year, or let's say ILFS. Okay. Or let's say Jet Airways. So you guys tell me which company's commercial paper you will invest in if there is nothing available with respect to this. which commercial paper which you guys will opt for? Naturally Tata. Why Tata? Because you guys trust Tata. Okay, Tata company has a history of, sustainability compared to all these companies which do not have credit worthiness. So this is the feature of commercial paper. And when we talk about debentures, so if you see stocks, what are stocks? Let's say this is the equity of a company, 100%, and let's say 50% of the company is being listed on stock market and 50% is represented by, let's say, 50,000 shares. Okay, so 1,000 share will comprise of 1% equity. है ना? So basically what happened in this case is 50% equity is distributed in number of shares. So similarly, assume there is a debenture of 5 CR, okay, and this is distributed in the stock market as, debentures of 5 lakh rupees. So that even small retail investors can opt for companies' debt. That's why it is distributed in small forms, these debentures. Some people are not capable of, taking this or investing in this 5 CR debt of any particular company. So this debt is distributed in small token sized debentures which any person can invest in. Okay? So I hope you understand the nature of commercial paper as well as debentures. These current affairs are sufficient, more than sufficient, I would say. And now let's understand what the news is all about. So the RBI says to ensure that individual investors' losses are minimized. Okay? Especially in the case of when the company issues commercial papers as well as non-convertible debentures. Okay? So the RBI says the issuers of commercial papers and NCDs have to disclose information on any default in payment through various channels. Okay? And the most important thing, that the maximum investment that any individual investor can do within a particular commercial paper or non-convertible debenture must be within up to 25% of the total amount issued. So what does it mean? First of all, let's understand what non-convertible debentures are. Non-convertible is nothing. Some debentures have the characteristic of, that companies usually allow that, convertible debentures has the property of debentures being converted into stocks at a future date if you continue with the company. Okay. But in the case of non-convertible debentures, those debentures cannot be converted into stocks. Okay. So this is what non-convertible debentures are. And the thing which these guys say is that it is an individual investors can invest up to maximum 25% of the issue size. For example, let's the total issue size of commercial paper is 1 lakh rupees. So me as an investor can only invest up to 25,000 rupees in this commercial paper investment. Okay? So this is what the mandate of RBI is talking about. Okay? So this is what this news is all about. Any confusion in this? 21. Sai, what didn't you understand? So apart from this cap, okay, there is this information regarding this commercial papers as well as NCDs being usually issued in denomination of 5 lakh rupees or either in the multiple of 5 lakh. Okay, so this you need to remember. And apart from 25% cap on commercial papers as well as NCDs, okay, this is also applicable to investment trust as well as real estate investment trusts, infrastructure investment and real estate. What are these two things? So infrastructure investment trusts, okay, or you can say real estate investment trusts. What do these mechanisms do? They take money from customers, they pool their money, okay, and this money, if invested in infrastructure projects, it is infrastructure investment funds, okay, and then if the pooled money is invested in real estate projects, this is the core function of real estate investment trusts. Okay. Now, in order to take this money, these investment trusts usually issue, instruments to take money from these people, customers, and the investment limit a particular customer can do in these instruments to pay infrastructure investment funds the money, it is 25%, as in the case of commercial deposits as well as commercial paper as well as non-convertible debentures. Okay? See, Sai, the main difference between these two is usually the duration. So let's say the bond that any company issue is usually for a longer duration. The commercial paper, an unsecured deposit, it's usually for less than a year or maximum a year. But debentures can be issued for not only short term but also for the long term. So you can consider it as a medium term debt instrument. And debentures are also, utilized for specific projects also. Let's say if a company wants to expand, so debentures are released for that particular thing. It's for single retail investor, not for all. Okay. Next thing, cooperative societies as well as limited liability partnerships with a minimum net worth of 100 crores is also eligible to issue commercial papers to get funds in the debt format. Okay? Any confusion in this above news to anyone? Abhi batao, otherwise I'll move on to the next news. All clear? So let's move on to the next news. It talks about Indian banks have closed their overseas branch since financial year 19 up to 25%. Okay. So most of the Indian banks, not only public sector banks, but also the private sector banks have been consistently reducing their foreign branches. Okay, and if you take the data from financial year 2019 to financial year 23, there is a considerable decline of 25%. Okay, so for us, since it's also a very huge amount of tenure data, it becomes important for us to remember. Okay, so 25% you remember, it's an overall metric, but also remember the ranking of the public sector banks, that which is at the top with respect to reduction of foreign branches. So as you can see, Bank of Baroda has closed the highest number of overseas banks. Okay, and this is overall also, but also in public sector banks. SBI is the second and ICICI Bank shut the third highest number of overseas branches. And if you only see the private sector banks, as you can see, there is no private sector bank above ICICI. So this is naturally the most the bank which shut down the most for overseas branches of its bank. Okay? So these are the things you need to remember. So the first thing, that the data is from FY 2019, 25% reduction in all Indian banks. If we take the data overall, ranking is Bank of Baroda, SBI and ICICI. In private sector, it is first. So this is the data you need to remember. Next, RBI's 7-day variable repo rate auction for 1 lakh crore today, or day before tomorrow, day before yesterday. So with the system liquidity remaining tight, the RBI said it will conduct a 7-day variable rate repo auction for 1 lakh crore. Okay, and it is to infuse liquidity into the system. So in order to understand this news, not only you need to understand what variable repo rate operations are, but you also need to understand the context behind RBI doing this. So as you can see that the RBI was consistently increasing the repo rate or the policy rate under Monetary Policy Committee in order to reduce the liquidity within the system. And that was being done in order to control the inflationary conditions that were, emerging on account of various conflicts that were happening in global arena, such as Ukraine conflict as well as Israel-Hamas conflict. Okay, so as RBI was doing so, the inflation was also getting controlled, and now when the inflation is within the metric of RBI's mandated target, which is what? Can anybody tell me what is the inflation target provided to MPC? रेंज बताओ 4% क्या बता रहे? Yes, 4 plus minus 2%. Yes, so it's 2% to 6%. That RBI needs to keep inflation within this. Yes, correct. Okay, so once RBI understand that the inflation is right now within the mandated target range, but the liquidity within the Indian economy is still very low, in order to, so the objective of MPC, it talks about that RBI has to maintain price stability while keeping in mind the objective of growth. So it also needs to infuse liquidity in order to increase the growth rate of the economy. Okay? So that's why this liquidity infusion is there. Now what is variable rate repo auction? Okay. So variable repo rate, so previously when RBI used to infuse liquidity, it was fixed repo rate auctions. That means the rate of repo rate was fixed, let's say 6%. Okay, and whenever the banks used to get money from RBI, they have to pay this 6%. But now the concept of variable repo rate comes. Okay, so what is this variable repo rate? As you all know, when we talk about corridor, okay, this is repo rate and this is reverse repo rate. Repo rate is the rate at which banks get money from Reserve Bank of India while providing government securities as collateral. Okay? Whereas reverse repo rate, which the RBI offers to these banks for parking their funds into RBI. Okay? Now variable repo rate comes somewhere in this between. And why it comes here? So it is actually providing incentives to banks. Okay? For example, let's say when the market is providing you, money at a interest less than repo rate. Suppose market is providing you this much interest rate, money market. So if you go into the money market, you get short-term money at very low interest compared to repo rate. So why banks will go to RBI for the money? They can just go to money market, and they can, get the money at a lower cost. So that's why RBI came with the component of variable repo rate, which says that do the auction or do the competition over here let's say 6 banks will come, and these 6 banks will compete for the interest rate in which they will be ready to buy. But obviously that interest rate cannot go below reverse repo rate. But it will be far less than repo rate. So that means the bank can get money at a low repo rate compared to the initial one which was higher. Is this making sense to all of you? Any confusion in this? And if you tell me. And if you have any doubt, feel free to ask. Because let's take time to understand these finance news so that it becomes easier for us to learn. So money market. So when you talk about money market, it is a market for short-term, highly liquid, debt market. Okay? And not only banks are there, but there are some major institutions are there. RBI is also there. Okay? And this is usually very short term, let's 2 day, 1 week, and up to maximum 1 year. Whereas in stock market, the company's shares are listed over there, and we call them capital markets. So these are different markets. And then we also have commodities market, where the prices of commodities are traded. Okay, so these are all different markets. So in India, which institution regulate money market? Yes, correct. Reserve Bank of India. Right? And what about this capital and commodities market? Very good. ठीक है, इसको मैं एक और बार समझा देता हूं so that you can understand this through an example. Let's take repo rate is 6%, but in the market 5% interest rate is going on. So why would bank go to RBI and get money at higher interest rate? है ना? They would want a lower interest rate compared to what repo rate is being offered. So RBI says, let's come together. RBI brings all the banks, okay, come and sit here and do the auction. So 1 lakh crore rupees are there. At how much interest rate you guys want? So this one person will say, okay, I want it at 4%. This can say 4.5%. And if 4.5% is being said, naturally, the higher the interest rate will be decided, that will be utilized as the interest rate at which these companies will be ready to buy the money from Reserve Bank of India, which is comparatively lower than the repo rate. That's why these variable repo rate auctions are there. Previously, no auctions were happening. This was the repo rate, पैसा लो, आगे बढ़ो. But अभी यहाँ पे आपको auction के लिए बुलाते हैं. आओ चेक करो कि क्या interest rate आपको रखनी है. ठीक है, आप लोगों ने decide कर लिया what's interest rate. Now let's move on to that. Sundar, nobody is forcing any particular bank to buy from here only. But अगर आप यहाँ पर जाओगे, and since the institution is also RBI, and when during auction you can get a very good interest rate, you can do from here. But if you find good options in money market, you can opt for that also. So there is no compulsion with respect to banks regarding liquidity options. ठीक है? Let's move on to the next news. So IDF investments, with respect to IDF investments, insurance regulator says that individual approvals are being ended. Okay, previously what used to happen, that whenever a insurance company, insurance company receives a lot of money, from the people for insurance. So it's actually a pool of money, and that pool of money needs to be invested in somewhere. Okay, so obviously when any particular insurance company wants to invest in an infrastructure debt fund, so what previous was the case, that every proposal of these insurance company will go to IRDA, IRDA will see that proposal and IRDA will approve it. So that is one thing, but that was being cumbersome. A lot of approvals were coming and then a lot of time was being taken by IRDA. So IRDA says, let's end this individual approval method, okay, and let's keep a standard method with respect to approval of money being invested into infrastructure development fund by insurance companies. Okay, so what is that standard that insurance company must insure while they are investing in infrastructure development fund? So any infrastructure development fund must be registered with RBI, must have minimum 5-year residual tenure for debt securities and minimum AA credit rating. Okay, so if you see this mechanism, IRDA says that any insurance company, while investing money into an infrastructure debt fund NBFC, that NBFC must be registered by RBI. Okay, whatever securities it releases must be, क्योंकि सिक्योरिटी रिलीज करेगा तभी तो आप फंड दोगे, है ना, 5-year tenure securities and AA rating. This is the condition being talked about by IRDA. Yes, insurance companies are under IRDA. What is the confusion? Okay, so the current chairman is Debashish Panda. These are all static news that you need to understand. Let's focus on the next news, which says pension schemes added 97 lakh new subscribers in 2023. Okay, so this is a very important news. It's an annual news. Again, I'm saying annual news as well as the latest news just before your examination. Those two type of news are important. Okay, so 97 lakh new subscribers have been added within the pension system. Let's be clear with respect to what institutions we are talking about. That's why I say keep on asking me these questions. Insurance companies are being regulated by IRDA. That's why investment norms, what these insurance companies will do, is being told by IRDAI. Whereas NBFCs are regulated by RBI. Okay, these NBFCs are registered by RBI. Okay, this is not an insurance company. So that's why no point of IRDA in here. Okay, the mandate is only for these guys. IRDA is saying choose that NBFC which is registered by RBI, registered with RBI, and that releases securities that have a residual maturity. Residual maturity, it's a maturity at least of 5 years. That whatever securities or whatever bonds that these people are releasing, these NBFCs are releasing, must have a maturity period of 5 years. Okay, so I hope you understand this. Any confusion? Next, so NPS as well as Atal Pension Yojana in 2023 received 97 lakh new subscribers. Okay, तो इसको याद कर लेना. And this is obviously up 16% on year, and nothing special is there in this news. Apart from that, these two pension things are being regulated by PFRDA, and the current chairman is Deepak Mohanty. Okay, Next news, RBI. See, RBI defines politically exposed person to comply with FATF norms. Okay, so what are these politically exposed persons? So let's say if a minister of Canada comes to India and do some transactions with respect to any Indian transaction with any Indian banks. So first of all, that person is politically exposed person because it involves politically exposed persons involve individuals with prominent public functions. And what are the examples? Head of state government, senior politicians, senior government, judicial, military officers, senior executives of state-owned corporations, important political party officials. All these people are politically exposed person, and if they are involved in any financial transactions, they need to be complied with FATF norms. So if you understand what FATF norm is with respect to politically exposed person is, it's a little bit more scrutiny compared to a normal person. So for example, okay, in a normal person case, what does a bank do in order to understand its identity? What is that process? It is KYC, know your customer. Okay, but in order to understand these politically exposed persons more, FATF norms, mandates to the banks that you need to not only understand their identity, but you also need to understand their transaction in foreign, issues, foreign jurisdiction, their business relationship, where do they get money from, what are their source of revenue, how much wealth is there. Okay, all these things needs to be done of these politically exposed person. This is the norms of FATF. Okay, so this is the news all about. Again, so this was the news that we discussed previously in the previous session, short selling, that SEBI was actually deciding to put out some norms related to short selling in order to regulate it. So SEBI has actually released these norms. So what are these norms? Let's understand that also. So with respect to short selling, SEBI has released some basic norms. Okay, and these norms are obviously for institutional investors, retail investors, stockbrokers, and stock exchanges. So if you take an example of institutional investors, you can take LIC. If you take retail investor, any of you person, X or Y, okay. Stockbroker, Zerodha, Grow, and stock exchange, National Stock Exchange, Bombay Stock Exchange. So I hope you understand what are these different stakeholders within the capital markets, and what are the norms that SEBI has told with respect to short selling to all these people. To institutional investors, SEBI said, while doing it or while taking a position or while putting up order of selling a stock, this institutional investor must mention what exactly, that if the institutional investor is selling these stocks, in order to short sell them, they have to mention it before the order that we are short selling it. Okay? With respect to retail investors, when the trading hours end, trading hours usually end after 3:30, then these retail investors have to tell the SEBI that we have sold these stocks for shorting. And these stockbrokers, the responsibility is to collect all information regarding short selling and display it daily after trading hours. Whereas for stock exchanges, they have to take data from all stockbrokers and publish that data weekly on their websites. So these are different mandate provided by SEBI to all these stakeholders of capital markets. Okay? Any confusion with respect to any of these things to anyone? Feel free to ask. क्लियर है ना? आई होप सॉर्टेड है. Okay, for those of you who didn't attend previous session, so suppose this is a investor, this is a stock exchange, and this is stock broker. Okay, so this investors borrowed, let's say 100 HDFC stock with the intention of selling all these stocks. ठीक है? And right now the price is, let's say, 1000 rupees. So the money this person right now has, how much money it has right now? 1 lakh rupees. ठीक है? And now when the stock price declined to 900, ठीक है, so basically it sold high, and when the stock price declined, it bought all the shares which he had sold. ठीक है, तो he bought 100 HDFC stock. So what the price will be now? Because now the price is 900, so the cost it will be 90,000 only. ठीक है? So he made profit of what? 10,000 rupees. And he returns back all the stocks he borrowed to the stockbroker. So this is the process of short selling. Is this clear to Ankita? What exactly happens in short selling? So let's move on to the next news. So the next news talks about new alternative investment funds norm mandate investment in demat form appointment of custodian. ठीक है? And now this is a very important news. You need to make sure that you understand this news properly. ठीक है? First of all, we are talking about alternative investment funds. So these funds are not, located in a particular stock market where you can just, if you're registered in a stock market, you can just go to these funds and buy these funds. It's not like that. Okay? These, some are listed, some are not listed. There are 3 categories of alternate investment funds. Category 1, 2, 3. So in category fund, these, either they are high growth funds or funds having social impact. So for example, venture capital funds, I hope you understand. These funds invest in various startups, such as Sequoia Capital and other. And we have social impact. That means those funds which invest in infrastructure development. Or let's say we also have SBIPO venture fund which invest in MSME. Okay, so these type of funds come under category 1 of alternate investment funds. Okay, and then we have this category 2 of alternative investment funds. In this category 2, we have funds that employ complex strategies to generate returns for their investors. And what are these complex strategies? I hope you must have heard about algorithm trading, in which these companies employ algorithm, which is whatever algorithm these guys develop, that once the price will go this much, then the computer will automatically either buy or sell. Okay? So such type of algorithm trading using derivatives or leverage. So such complex strategy is employed in these funds, and example being hedge funds, private equity funds. So how many of you have heard about let's say Berkshire Hathaway, Marcellus Investment Funds, Motilal Oswal Investment Funds, Bridgewater Investment Funds, है ना? So these are all these funds, hedge funds that employ these complex strategies. So they comes under category 2. Whereas category 3 are the most flexible funds with respect to strategy they adopt, but they are mostly meant for high net worth individuals. Okay, so these are the funds that take money from these high net worth individuals and they employ any of the strategy in order to generate returns for these high net worth individuals. Okay, these are the 3 categories of funds. What with respect to regulation, what used to happen was that all these funds previously were regulated by SEBI, that at least SEBI has maintained that most of these funds must have a demat, whatever shares that they buy or sell, they must be in the form of a dematerialized form. That is, paper should not be there, a digital, copy of whatever transaction that these guys are doing should be there. So first is dematerialized form. Then another thing is custodian. A custodian should be there. A custodian is a company that makes sure that whatever stocks you are doing, it is being done securely. Okay? It take care of whatever investments that you are doing, such as you have bought 100 stocks of HDFC, this custodian will take care of those stocks. Okay, and when you sell those stocks, this custodian will sell it to whatever person you are selling it to. So custodian is like a enterprise that take care of all of your transaction administrative aspects. Okay? But in category 1, below 500 crore, if there was any fund, there was no regulation with respect to that. Hedge fund is category 2. Okay, so with respect to what I was saying, that under category 1, there was this category of 500 crore fund less than, if the fund is having funds worth less than 500 crore, there was no such regulation. But SEBI says no. Let's go for all the funds being having this demat form and appointment of custodian. So as you can see, the mandatory appointment of custodian by AIS with corpus less than or equal to 500 crore. This unit was left previously with respect to regulation, but now even this is also regulated via the same measures that were being applicable on all other category of funds. Any confusion? Custodian, obviously say CDSL can be a custodian, some other, just like in previous day news, we've seen how, when SBI wanted to take overseas syndicated loan, this one company actually make sure that this transaction happened smoothly. And what was that company? HSBC Securities. So even banks can also be a custodian. So CDSL to anyways hai, but banks can also be. Next, treasury bills, sovereign gold bond are retail investors' top pick with respect to fund inflows. Okay, so retail direct scheme, I hope all of you know, it allows retail investors to invest in government securities, isn't it? Previously, these government securities were sole prerogative of, institutional investors, big institutions. But right now, RBI, through this scheme, make sure that retail investors also invest in this. Next is sovereign gold bonds. So these bonds are nothing but government securities denominated in gold. So think these securities just like gold. For example, if the security is worth, let's say, 10,000 rupees. If the security is worth 10,000 rupees, so assume it as 10,000 rupees gold. And if you invest it, you pay the money for this gold, and just how the gold prices appreciate, your prices will also appreciate, your security price will also appreciate. And whatever the gold price at the maturity will be, when you redeem the bond, you will be receiving that same price apart from the interest, which is usually 2.5%, which you get at fixed rate. Okay? So this is the news. Now let's try to skim all this phase 1 news as fast as possible. Okay? So India to import 10,000 megawatt of hydro power from Nepal. So India is saying, let's say we've already helped you build these hydropower plants. Now let's make a pact, and whatever electricity you are generating, give us something. Okay? So this is same kind of pact. Okay? And this is for next 10 years. And India has also agreed to provide 10 billion rupees financial aid to Nepal for reconstruction of Jajarkot and Rukum West. And an agreement of launch of Nepali satellites has also been reached. So 3 things been reached here. Next, plans to broaden PLI schemes on hold, says DPIIT secretary. So it says what? So PLI schemes, as all of you know, is right now in 14 key sectors. So the secretary is saying that we are not thinking about expanding the number of sectors, but we are trying to make sure that whatever schemes that are being implemented in these sectors, they do get implemented in an optimized manner. Okay. Next is toy export zoomed to 39% to $326 million in 8 years. So as you can see, toy manufacturing base in India is actually keeping on expanding. Okay, and that as a result, the exports are also increasing, while the import declined 52%. Okay, so it's a good sign that we are not getting cheap toys from China. Another news: Paytm signs MOU with Ayodhya Nagar Nigam, and this is being done because, as you all know, on January 22, the inauguration of Ram Mandir will be happening, and Paytm has signed MOU with the Nagar Nigam so that whatever shops are there under Ayodhya Nagar Nigam, they will be utilizing Paytm QR code and the sound machines for the payment purposes. Next, Indian tech startups have raised $70 billion since 2019, and this is a very huge news. Okay. So in India, 950 tech startups have been registered in 2023. It's an important news, annual news. And overall, since 2019, $70 billion funds have been raised by Indian tech startups. And this is a report by NASSCOM, a very reputed institution. So make sure you learn about this. Next, high price lift coffee exports to record $1.16 billion in 2023. So with respect to coffee exports, even though the volumes are reduced compared to previous year, but the value has increased on account of increase in price, and that's why the coffee exports in value terms registered a growth of 4.5%. Okay? So previously it was $1.11 billion, now it is $1.16 billion. And the important thing for us is to remember that Italy is the largest market with respect to coffee, then Germany, and then Russian Federation. So as we were discussing in the previous class, what was the largest market for tea? Whomsoever were there in the previous class, what was the largest market for tea? And tea exports from India. प्रीवियस क्लास को रिवाइज करके आना, ठीक है. नेक्स्ट, फिनटेक फंडिंग फॉल टू 63% in 2023. So although tech startups are actually getting money, okay, but fintech startups have registered a decline in funding. So in this year, only $2 billion these people have received, and this is very low compared to $5.4 billion they received in 2022. Okay, so you can assume which sector is right now at low. So Bengaluru, leader in fintech funding, then Mumbai, then Jaipur. Shashi Singh appointed as new president of All India Rubber Industries Association. One liner. So the Home Minister has released this e-Samriddhi portal through which farmers can, sell their tur dal to NAFED or National Cooperative Consumer Federation at MSP. Okay? Right now, e-Samriddhi portal is providing an avenue to sell tur dal, but it will expand for all pulses except gram and green gram. Okay? And the Home Minister also says to all the pulse makers that make India Atmanirbhar in pulses before 2028. So remember this. This is very important because sometimes we also tend to go for 2030. Next, Glenmark launches Indian biosimilar of liraglutide for diabetes. So liraglutide is a drug, and this Glenmark Pharmaceuticals has developed a biosimilar. What is biosimilar? It is a drug obviously is made from some formulations. So biosimilar is, or the formulations of the new drug is almost similar to the original one, the patent of which has been done. Okay? And why these biosimilars are being made? Because the original patented drug is usually high cost and the disease is being prominent in India. So in order to reduce the disease burden and to reduce the cost of therapy, such type of biosimilars are developed, and the biosimilar name is Lirafit. Next, to curb overcharging, all fees on blood units except processing levy waived. That means when you go to blood bank, okay, when you go to blood bank and if you ask for any particular type of blood, the blood bank should not ask you money for blood samples or blood units, except the cost of storage as well as processing. That's why the slogan, blood is not for sale. So only this cost can be levied and nothing else. US invites India to join naval coalition. Operation Prosperity Guardian, a multinational naval coalition organized to counter threat posed by Yemen Houthi militants. So if you see the map, this is India, Arabian Sea, okay, this is Africa, Yemen, okay, and this is Red Sea. So I hope you understand which region is being talked about here. The US in the operation is Prosperity Guardian. Microsoft add AI key in first change to PC keyboard. In PC keyboard, on the right side of space bar, there is an Alt key, but that Alt key will be pushed aside and the Copilot key, AI key, will be installed by Microsoft. Okay? Next, Flipkart partners Fireblocks to support Web3 users. NARCL CEO Natarajan Sundar quits and the P. Santosh is now the interim CEO. NARCL is a asset reconstruction company registered by RBI, registered with RBI, okay, and it is responsible for aggregation and resolution of NPAs. And how does it do so? Okay, jitne bhi NPAs honge, they actually convert it into a particular asset instrument in order that is up for sale for other companies or other set of investors to buy. And obviously these type of instruments, although are risky, thereby they also provide you higher returns. Next, IITs develop tech to recycle waste from iron ore mining. So IIT Madras and IIT Kanpur have developed this. New SEBI ED takes charge. So Govindapalli Ram Mohan Roy is the new executive director in SEBI. India topples Taiwan, gains heft in MSCI Emerging Market Index. So India has, emerged in the second position of Emerging Market Index released by Morgan Stanley Capital International Index. Okay? What does it tell you? It tells you that India is gaining position with respect to the country, okay, which is an attractive destination among emerging markets. Next, NSO released a news with respect to economy. That economy will likely be growing at 7.3% in financial year 24. Okay, so until or unless the next data will come, make sure to remember this. It's a very important data. National income is specifically mentioned in RBI's syllabus. Tamil Nadu overtakes Gujarat in EV registration in 2023. So don't worry, this is all talking about the fourth position. Okay, the first position is still with Maharashtra. Okay, and then UP, and then Karnataka, and then UP, and then Tamil Nadu. Okay. Next, we have GAIL signs 10-year deal with Vitol Asia for LNG supply. One-liner news. Then we have this India-Guyana signed pact on hydrocarbon cooperation. Okay. Okay, so the rest of the news we will do in the next session. Okay. We will cover these are one-liner news also. So the most important thing you need to focus is understanding these finance parts. Okay. Make sure you understand these finance part. One-liner, so anyways we have to revise only. Okay. Thank you guys for joining. We'll meet in the next session. Keep revising your concepts.